On Christmas Eve in my Florida home, after gifting my son, Eddie, a BMW and handing his wife, Maureen, a designer purse, I waited for the moment they would hand me something, anything, that showed I mattered. Instead, my son smirked and said, "Mom, thanks for everything, but Maureen told me it's time you learned a lesson. So, no gifts for you." Maureen sat back with a satisfied smile, unaware that I had come prepared to teach a lesson of my own. My name is Ruth Dawson. I am 73 years old. And if you had told me last Christmas that this year I would be sitting alone in my Naples home, with no plans except sharing this story with strangers who understand betrayal better than my own blood, I would never have believed you. But here I am. And you know what? I am at peace with it. Because some lessons cost you everything to learn, but they give you back something more valuable than any gift wrapped in shiny paper. They give you yourself. Now, before I tell you what happened that night, I want to know something. Where are you right now? Are you watching this from your living room while wrapping presents? Maybe you're in bed, scrolling late at night because you can't sleep. Or perhaps you're like me, spending the holidays quietly, reflecting on the people who broke your trust. Whatever your story is, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from and what your Christmas plans are this year. Because I have learned that the people who truly understand you are not always the ones who share your last name. Sometimes they are strangers on the internet who have survived the same kind of heartbreak. And if you have ever felt invisible in your own family, if you have ever given everything and received nothing but cruelty in return, then stay with me. This story is for you. Hit that like button if you believe people should be held accountable for how they treat those who love them. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it is okay to set boundaries, even with your own children. And subscribe, because what happens next will show you that silence is not weakness. Sometimes it is strategy. Now, let me take you back to that night. The night everything changed. The house smelled like roasted turkey and cinnamon candles. The Christmas tree stood tall in the corner of the living room, decorated with ornaments my late husband Ray and I had collected over 40 years of marriage. The lights blinked softly, casting a warm glow across the room. I had spent 3 days preparing for this evening. I scrubbed floors that were already clean. I polished silverware that rarely left the drawer. I went to the grocery store twice because I forgot the cranberry sauce Eddie loved as a child. I wanted everything to be perfect. When Eddie and Maureen arrived, I hugged my son tight at the door. For a second, just a second, I felt like I had him back. He smelled like the same cologne Ray used to wear. His arms felt strong and safe. But the moment Maureen stepped inside, her eyes began scanning my home like she was taking inventory. Not admiring, assessing. Dinner was quiet. Eddie talked about work. I asked questions. Maureen scrolled through her phone, barely touching the food I had spent hours preparing. I noticed she was wearing a bracelet I had never seen before. It looked expensive. Far more expensive than anything her boutique job could afford. But I said nothing. Mothers learn to swallow questions when they sense the answers might hurt. After dinner, we moved to the living room for gifts. I handed Eddie a small box first. Inside were the keys to a used BMW I had been saving toward for months. Not because I owed him anything, not because I wanted his approval, but because a mother's love does not disappear just because her heart has been bruised. When he opened it, his face went blank. Then his eyes filled with shock. "Mom," he whispered, "a BMW? You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," I said softly. He hugged me, a real hug, the kind that reminded me of the boy he used to be before marriage changed him. Then I handed Maureen her gift, a designer handbag. She opened it, glanced at it briefly, said, "Cute," and tossed it onto the couch like it was a dish towel. No thank you. No appreciation. Just a casual dismissal. I folded my hands in my lap and waited, because it was my turn now. And despite everything, despite the coldness I had felt growing between us for months, I still hoped. I still believed that maybe, just maybe, they had thought of me too. Eddie cleared his throat. He shifted in his seat. He would not look me in the eye. "Mom," he said slowly, "we didn't get you anything this year." The words hung in the air. I blinked. I told myself I had misheard him. But he kept talking. "Maureen said you need to learn to give without expecting anything back. He tried to laugh. Like it was a joke, like humiliating your mother on Christmas Eve was something light and funny. Maureen leaned back against the couch, arms crossed, a small smile playing at the corner of her mouth. Not embarrassed, not apologetic. Satisfied. The room felt smaller suddenly. The lights on the tree seemed too bright. The warmth I had worked so hard to create felt hollow. I could have cried. Part of me wanted to. But I did not. Because somewhere deep inside me, beneath the shock and the hurt, something else stirred. Clarity. I reached into the drawer beside my chair. My hand did not shake. My voice did not tremble. "Well," I said quietly, "if tonight is about lessons, then let me teach you something." I pulled out a large envelope, thick, heavy, sealed. I placed it on the coffee table between us. Eddie looked confused. Maureen's smile faded just slightly. "Go on," I said. "Open it." They had no idea this night was never going to end the way they expected. But to understand that Christmas Eve, you have to go back. Back to when things started changing. Back to September, when I first realized something was wrong. It began with silence. Eddie used to call me 3, sometimes 4 times a week. Just quick check-ins while he drove to work or made his morning coffee. Nothing deep, nothing long. Just a son letting his mother know he was thinking of her. "Hey, Mom. Just calling to say hi. How's the garden? Mom, did you see that storm coming through? Make sure the shutters are locked. Love you, Mom. Talk soon." Small things. The kind of things you do not appreciate until they stop. In September, those calls became less frequent. A week would pass, then 2 weeks, then nearly a month slipped by without a single word. I told myself he was busy. Newlyweds need time to build their life together. That is natural. That is healthy. But mothers know. We feel distance the way you feel, a coming storm. Something shifts in the air. Something tightens in your chest. One morning, I walked into my kitchen and saw the basket of oranges sitting on the counter. I had bought them 4 days earlier because Eddie always loved fresh squeezed juice. When he was little, he would stand beside me while I cut them in half, waiting for his glass like it was liquid gold. But now, those oranges just sat there, untouched. And I realized the only reason I still bought them was for a son who no longer came around. I threw them away that afternoon. All of them. The house felt different after Ray died. Bigger, quieter. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears until you turn on the television just to hear another human voice. Ray had been gone 2 years by then. 2 years of waking up to an empty bed. 2 years of cooking meals for one. 2 years of realizing that the life you built with someone does not disappear when they do. It just keeps going. Only now you are walking through it alone. Eddie had been my anchor during that time. He called every day in those first few months after we buried his father. He checked on me. He made sure I was eating. He sat with me on the porch and let me cry without trying to fix it. But marriage changed him. Or maybe it was not marriage. Maybe it was Maureen. At first, I tried to be understanding. She was young. She was adjusting. Becoming part of a new family is not easy. But the signs were there. Small at first. Easy to dismiss if you wanted to lie to yourself. Like the time Eddie mentioned coming over for Sunday dinner and then called an hour before to cancel. "Maureen has plans," he said, as if her plans automatically became his, without question. Or the time I invited them both to a little gathering at my friend Janice's house. Eddie said yes, but the morning of, Maureen texted me directly. "We won't be able to make it. Eddie needs rest." Not, "we decided." Not, "Sorry, something came up." Just a statement, like she had the authority to speak for him now. I stared at that text for a long time. I wanted to call him. I wanted to ask if he even knew she had canceled on his behalf, but I did not, because I was afraid of the answer. Mothers are taught to be patient, to give space, to trust that love will bring your children back when they are ready. But what they do not tell you is that sometimes space becomes distance, and distance becomes abandonment. And before you know it, you are standing in your kitchen throwing away oranges because the person you bought them for does not even remember you exist. By late September, I had not seen Eddie in nearly 6 weeks. I tried texting him. Casual things, nothing that sounded desperate. "Hope work is going well. Let me know if you want to come by for dinner. Saw your favorite show is back on. Made me think of you. Miss you, sweetheart." He would reply hours later. Sometimes the next day. Busy. Will let you know. Thanks, Mom. You too. Short. Distant. Like I was someone he barely knew. One evening, I sat on my back porch watching the sun set over the neighbor's roof. The air was warm, the kind of warmth Florida keeps even as the rest of the country starts pulling out sweaters. I thought about calling Eddie. Really calling him. Not texting. Not leaving it up to him to respond whenever he felt like it. But then I thought about what I would say. Why do not you call me anymore? Did I do something wrong? Do you still love me? And I realized how pathetic that sounded. A mother begging her grown son for attention. So, I did not call. I just sat there, watching the sky turn pink and orange, feeling the weight of loneliness settle deeper into my bones. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Eddie. For a second, my heart lifted. Maybe he was thinking of me. Maybe he wanted to visit. I opened it. Hey, Mom. Maureen and I might stop by this weekend if we have time. She wants to talk to you about something. Not, I want to see you. Not, I miss you. If we have time. I read those words over and over. If we have time. Like I was an errand. A task to check off between grocery shopping and laundry. And the second part. She wants to talk to you about something. Not Eddie. Maureen. I set the phone down on the kitchen table and stared at it for a long time. Something inside me knew. Not the details. Not the full picture. But enough. Enough to know that the son I raised, the boy who used to hug me goodnight and tell me I was the best mom in the world, was slipping away. And the woman he married was the one holding the door open. They came over that Saturday. I spent the morning cleaning even though the house was already spotless. I vacuumed the living room twice. I changed the hand towels in the bathroom. I set out fresh flowers on the dining table. Old habits. The things mothers do when they want their children to feel welcome. I made Eddie's favorite meal. Roast chicken with garlic, mashed potatoes, and cornbread. The same dinner I used to make every Sunday when he was growing up. The same dinner Ray would sit down to after a long day, loosening his tie and saying, "Ruth, you outdid yourself again." I wanted Eddie to walk in and smell home. I wanted him to remember what it felt like to be loved without conditions. When they arrived, Eddie hugged me at the door. A quick hug, polite. The kind you give someone you are obligated to see, not someone you miss. Maureen stepped in behind him wearing sunglasses even though the sun was already setting. She slid them up onto her head and glanced around my home the way someone inspects a hotel room they are not sure they want to stay in. "Smells good," Eddie said, trying to sound cheerful. "Thank you, sweetheart," I said. "Go ahead and sit. Dinner's almost ready." Maureen walked slowly through the living room, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She paused near the bookshelf, running one finger along the edge like she was checking for dust. Then she turned to me with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "You know, Ruth," she said casually, "this house is really big for one person." I was pulling the chicken out of the oven. I paused, oven mitts still on my hands. "It is the house Ray and I built together," I said quietly. "It holds a lot of memories." She shrugged, examining her nails. "Sure, but practically speaking, it is a lot to maintain. You would probably be happier somewhere smaller, less work, less stress." Eddie was standing by the dining table, looking uncomfortable. He did not say anything. He just shifted his weight from one foot to the other and avoided my eyes. I set the roasting pan down on the counter and removed the oven mitts slowly. "I like my home," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I am not ready to leave it." Maureen smiled again. That same tight smile. "Of course. Just something to think about." But it was not a suggestion. It was a statement. A planted seed. We sat down to eat. I served everyone, the way I always did. Eddie dug into his food with genuine appreciation. For a few minutes, he looked like my son again. Relaxed, present. "This is amazing, Mom," he said between bites. "I forgot how good your cornbread is." My heart swelled a little. "I am glad you like it, honey." Maureen picked at her plate. She took a few small bites, then set her fork down and pulled out her phone. I watched her scroll while Eddie and I talked. She was not even pretending to be interested. Her thumbs moved quickly across the screen, her face illuminated by the blue glow. That was when I noticed it. The bracelet on her wrist. It was delicate. Gold. with small stones that caught the light every time she moved her hand. It looked expensive, the kind of thing you do not buy at a department store. I thought about what Eddie had told me months ago, that Maureen worked part-time at a boutique downtown, sales assistant, entry level. I looked at her purse sitting on the chair beside her. Designer. I recognized the brand because Janice's daughter had one. She had saved for a year to buy it. Then there were the shoes, the sunglasses, the perfectly manicured nails. None of it added up. But I said nothing. Because what could I say? Asking about money felt invasive, accusatory, and I did not want to start a fight. So I smiled and kept serving dinner like a good hostess. After we finished eating, Eddie helped me carry the plates to the kitchen. Just the two of us. For a moment, it felt like old times. "Thanks for dinner, Mom," he said softly. "Really?" "It was great." "You are always welcome here," I said, touching his arm. "You know that, right?" He nodded, but he would not look at me directly. I know. There was something in his voice. Something sad. Like he wanted to say more but could not. Before I could ask, Maureen called from the living room. "Eddie, come here for a second." He tensed. Then he gave me a quick smile and walked back out. I stood at the sink, rinsing dishes, listening to their muffled voices in the other room. I could not make out everything. But I heard enough. Maureen's voice, low and insistent. "This place could sell for so much. We could finally stop renting. You know we need this." Eddie said something I could not hear. Then Maureen again. Louder this time. "She does not need all this space. She is one person, Eddie. One person. And we are struggling." My hand stopped moving. The water ran over the plate I was holding, but I did not feel it. "We need this. Not maybe she would be happier downsizing. Not it might be easier for her. We need this." They were not thinking about what was best for me. They were thinking about what they could take. I turned off the water and stood there, gripping the edge of the sink, staring out the window into the backyard. The same backyard where Ray and I used to sit on Sunday mornings with coffee. The same yard where Eddie learned to ride his bike. The same home we spent 30 years filling with love and laughter and the small, ordinary moments that make a life worth living. And now my son's wife was standing in my living room, calculating its value like it was nothing more than a transaction. I dried my hands slowly. I took a deep breath. Then I walked back into the living room with a smile on my face. "Anyone want dessert?" I asked brightly. "I made peach cobbler." Maureen glanced at her phone. "Actually, we should get going. Early morning tomorrow." Eddie nodded quickly, like he was relieved to have an excuse to leave. They gathered their things. Maureen gave me a brief, obligatory hug. Eddie hugged me a little longer, but it still felt distant. "Thanks again, Mom," he said. "Anytime, sweetheart." I stood at the door and watched them walk to their car. Maureen was already on her phone before she even got in. Eddie looked back once, just once, and gave me a small wave. Then they drove away. I closed the door and leaned against it. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. I walked back into the dining room and looked at the table. 3 plates, 3 glasses, evidence that people had been here, but it felt emptier now than it had before they came. I sat down in Ray's old chair and stared at the wall. Maureen's words played over and over in my mind. "We need this." Not, "we hope." Not maybe. Need. And Eddie had said nothing to defend me, nothing to stop her. That was when I realized something I had been avoiding for months. My son was not the same person anymore, and the woman he married was not going to stop until she got what she wanted. 3 weeks passed before I saw them again. 3 weeks of silence. No calls, no texts, nothing. I tried reaching out twice, once to ask how Eddie was doing, once to see if they wanted to come over for Sunday brunch. Both times, he replied with the same excuse. "Busy right now, Mom. Maybe next month." Maybe next month. As if his mother was something you penciled in when you had nothing better to do. I stopped trying after that. Pride has a way of protecting you when love starts to hurt too much. But then, out of nowhere, Eddie called. "Hey, Mom, Maureen and I are thinking about having a little cookout at our place this Saturday. Nothing fancy, just burgers and hanging out. You should come." I was so surprised, I almost dropped the phone. "Really?" "Yeah," he said, and for a moment he sounded like himself again. "I know it has been a while. Thought it would be nice." My heart lifted despite everything. Despite the coldness. despite Maureen's calculating comments about my house, despite the weeks of being ignored, because he was my son. And when your child reaches out, you take it, you hope. I would love to, I said. Great. Saturday around 2? I will be there. When I hung up, I stood in the kitchen, smiling like a fool. Maybe I had been wrong. Maybe things were getting better. Maybe Maureen was warming up to me. Mothers are experts at lying to themselves when the truth is too painful. Saturday came. I bought a store-made potato salad and a bottle of wine. I wore a nice blouse. I even put on a little makeup. Their apartment was small. A 2-bedroom rental in a complex near the highway, the kind of place young couples live while they save up for something better. Eddie greeted me at the door with a genuine smile. Hey Mom, come on in. The apartment smelled like charcoal and grilled meat. Maureen was inside, setting paper plates on a folding table. She glanced up when I entered. Oh, hey Ruth. Not warm, not cold, just neutral. Hi Maureen, I brought potato salad. Great, you can put it in the fridge. Eddie took the bowl from me and walked it to the kitchen. I followed, looking around. The apartment was neat but sparse. Minimal furniture, a small television, a couch that looked like it came from a thrift store. But what caught my eye was the shopping bag sitting on the counter. I could see the edge of a box inside, a designer shoe box, another one. Eddie saw me looking and quickly moved the bag out of sight. So, you want something to drink, Mom? I have iced tea. That sounds perfect. We went out to the small balcony where Eddie had set up a tiny grill. It overlooked the parking lot, but he had tried to make it nice. A couple of folding chairs. A string of lights he must have borrowed from somewhere. For a little while, it felt normal. Eddie flipped burgers. I asked him about work. He talked about a project he was managing. He laughed at something I said. It was the most relaxed I had felt around him in months. Maureen stayed inside, on her phone as usual. Then she stepped out onto the balcony, still scrolling. Babe, I am going to take this call real quick, she said without looking up. Eddie nodded. Sure. She walked down the stairs toward the small patch of grass near the fence that separated the complex from the next property over. Eddie and I kept talking. He told me about a coworker who reminded him of his father, the way the man organized his desk, the way he told terrible jokes but somehow made people laugh anyway. It was the first time Eddie had mentioned Ray in months. I smiled, even though my throat felt tight. Your dad would have liked him, I said softly. Eddie nodded. Yeah, he would have. Then I heard it. Maureen's voice. She was standing near the fence, her back to us, phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was low, but the wind carried it just enough. No, he does not suspect anything. Just give me time. I froze. Eddie was focused on the grill, oblivious. Maureen kept talking. Once the house sells, everything will fall into place. I just need him to convince her. My stomach dropped. I tried to keep my face neutral. I picked up my iced tea and took a sip even though my hands were shaking. Maureen laughed softly into the phone. Trust me, she will not see it coming. Eddie flipped a burger and glanced over at her. She okay? He asked me absently. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Maureen said a few more words I could not make out, then ended the call. She turned and walked back up the stairs, slipping her phone into her pocket like nothing had happened. Everything good? Eddie asked. Yeah, just work stuff, she said smoothly. She sat down in the chair beside me and smiled. That same tight smile I had seen at my house. I looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time, I did not see my son's wife. I did not see someone trying to adjust to a new family. I saw someone with a plan. The rest of the cookout passed in a blur. I do not remember what we talked about. I do not remember what the food tasted like. All I could hear was her voice. Once the house sells, everything will fall into place. Not if. Once. Like it was already decided. When it was time to leave, Eddie walked me to my car. Thanks for coming, Mom, he said. It was really good to see you. I hugged him tight. Tighter than usual. I love you, sweetheart, I said. Love you too. I got in my car and drove home in silence. My mind raced the entire way. Who was she talking to? What did she mean by he does not suspect anything? Was she talking about Eddie? Was there someone else? And the house. My house. She was already planning for it to be sold. already dividing up money that was not hers, already treating my home like it was a done deal. I pulled into my driveway and sat there for a long time, staring at the front door. The house Ray and I saved for. The house we painted together. The house where we raised our son. She wanted it, and she was using Eddie to get it. But worse than that, there was something else going on. Something Eddie did not know about. Something she was hiding. I needed to know the truth. Not guesses. Not suspicions. The truth. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Janice's number. She answered on the second ring. "Ruth, everything okay?" "No," I said quietly. "I need your help." There was a pause. "Come over," she said. "Right now." I started the car and backed out of the driveway. Because I was done pretending everything was fine. I was done waiting for things to get better on their own. If my son was being manipulated, if my home was being targeted, if there were secrets being kept, I needed to know. And I was going to find out. Janice lived 10 minutes away in a small yellow house with a garden that always looked better than mine. She had been my friend since Eddie was in diapers. She was there when Ray proposed. She was there when Eddie was born. She was there when Ray died. If anyone would understand, it was her. She opened the door before I even knocked. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. I walked into her living room and sat down on the couch where I had sat 100 times before, but this time felt different, heavier. Janice poured 2 glasses of sweet tea and handed me one. Then she sat down across from me and waited. I told her everything. The phone calls that stopped. The dinner where Maureen suggested I sell my house. The cookout where I overheard her talking about a plan. The expensive things she kept buying. The way Eddie had changed. When I finished, Janice was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and took my hand. "Ruth," she said gently, "this is not something you guess about. You need to know the truth, not suspicions, not assumptions, the truth." "But how?" I asked. "I cannot just accuse her of something without proof. Eddie would never forgive me." Janice nodded slowly. "I know someone," she said. "A retired police officer. He does private investigation work now, quietly, professionally. If there is something going on, he will find it." My stomach twisted. "You mean hire someone to follow her?" "I mean find out if your instincts are right," Janice said firmly. "Because if they are, Eddie is in danger. Not physical danger, but the kind that ruins lives. Financial danger, emotional danger. And you cannot protect him if you do not know what you are protecting him from." I stared down at my tea. What if I am wrong? What if I am just a paranoid old woman who cannot let go of her son? Janice squeezed my hand. "Then you will know that too. And you can let it go. But Ruth, I have known you for 40 years. You are not paranoid, you are careful, and your instincts have never been wrong." I looked up at her. "What is his name?" "Mr. Patel," she said. "He helped my cousin last year when she thought her business partner was stealing from her. Turned out she was right. Patel found everything. Quietly. No drama, just facts." She wrote down his number on a piece of paper and handed it to me. I stared at it for a long time. Hiring someone to investigate your own family felt like a betrayal. It felt like admitting that love was not enough, that trust had limits. But then I thought about Maureen's voice near the fence. Once the house sells, everything will fall into place. I thought about the expensive jewelry, the designer bags, the way she looked at my home like it was already hers. I folded the paper and put it in my purse. "Thank you," I said quietly. Janice walked me to the door and hugged me tight. "You are doing the right thing," she whispered. I drove home and sat in my driveway for 20 minutes before going inside. The next morning, I called Mr. Patel. His office was small, tucked above a tax preparation service in old downtown Naples. The stairs creaked as I climbed them. The hallway smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. When I knocked, a calm voice said, "Come in." Mr. Patel was older than I expected, maybe 65. Glasses, a kind face, the kind of man you would trust to tell you the truth even when it hurt. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Mrs. Dawson?" "Yes. Janice told me you might call. Please sit." I sat down and folded my hands in my lap. I did not know where to start. He waited patiently, not rushing me. Finally, I spoke. "I think my daughter-in-law is planning something that involves my house. And maybe someone else. I do not have proof, just a feeling. And one conversation I was not supposed to hear. I told him everything. The same story I had told Janice. He listened without interrupting. He took notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he set his pen down and looked at me. "Mrs. Dawson," he said gently, "what you are describing sounds like a pattern. The expensive items, the pressure to sell your home, the private phone calls. These are not random. They suggest intent. So you think I am right? I think you deserve to know the truth," he said, "and I can help you find it. But I need to be honest with you about something." I nodded. "If I look into this, I may find things you do not want to see. Things about your daughter-in-law. Maybe things about your son. The truth does not always feel good." My throat tightened. "I understand." He leaned back in his chair. "I will need 2 weeks, maybe less. I will follow her, document her activities, look into her finances if possible, see who she is meeting with, and then I will bring you everything I find." "How much will this cost?" He named a price. It was more than I wanted to spend, but less than losing my home, less than watching my son be used. "Okay," I said. He nodded and stood, extending his hand. "I will be in touch soon." I shook his hand and left. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I tried to keep myself busy. I cleaned the house even though it did not need it. I baked bread I did not eat. I organized closets that were already organized. Every time my phone rang, my heart jumped. But it was never him, just telemarketers, just spam calls. Eddie texted me once during those 2 weeks. "Hey Mom, hope you are doing okay. We will try to visit soon." We will try. Not, we miss you. Not, we want to see you. We will try. I stared at that message for a long time before replying. "Looking forward to it, sweetheart." I did not hear back. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, imagining what Patel might find. Part of me hoped he would find nothing, that Maureen was just materialistic, that the phone call meant something harmless, that I was overreacting. But another part of me, the part that had been silenced by doubt and guilt for months, knew better. Mothers know. We feel danger around our children the way animals sense storms. And I had been sensing this storm for a long time. On the 14th day, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Mrs. Dawson, this is Mr. Patel." My hand tightened around the phone. "Yes? I have what you asked for," he said quietly. "You should come by." My heart sank. "Did you find something?" There was a pause. "Yes," he said. "I think it is better if we talk in person." I closed my eyes. "I will be there in an hour." I hung up and sat down on the edge of my bed. My hands were shaking. For 2 weeks, I had been telling myself that maybe I was wrong. Maybe this was all in my head. Maybe I was just a lonely widow looking for problems where there were none. But the tone in Patel's voice told me everything I needed to know. He had found something. And it was bad. I stood up slowly, grabbed my purse, and walked to my car. The drive to his office felt longer than it should have. Every red light seemed to last forever. Every turn felt deliberate. When I finally climbed those creaky stairs again and knocked on his door, he opened it immediately. His face was serious. "Come in, Mrs. Dawson." I walked inside and sat in the same chair I had sat in 2 weeks ago. Patel sat down across from me and placed a thick manila folder on the desk between us. He looked at me for a long moment. "Before I open this," he said gently, "I want you to know that what you are about to see is going to hurt. But you asked for the truth, and you deserve it." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. He opened the folder slowly, and then he said the words I will never forget. "You should brace yourself." The first thing Mr. Patel pulled from the folder was a photograph. He slid it across the desk toward me, without saying a word. I picked it up with trembling hands. It was Maureen, standing outside a restaurant I did not recognize, wearing a dress I had never seen her in, smiling. But she was not alone. A man stood beside her, tall, well-dressed. His hand rested on the small of her back in a way that was far too familiar, too comfortable. I stared at the photo, trying to make sense of it. "Who is this?" I asked quietly. "His name is David Brennan," Patel said. "He owns a commercial real estate firm in Fort Myers." I looked up at him. Real estate. Patel nodded slowly. He pulled out another photograph. This one showed Maureen and the same man getting into a sleek black car. His hand was on her waist again. She was laughing. Another photo. The two of them entering a hotel. My stomach turned. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "At least 4 months," Patel said. "Maybe longer." I followed her on 3 separate occasions. Each time she met with him. Lunch, dinner, hotels. He paused. "Mrs. Dawson, I need to show you something else." He pulled out a stack of printed pages. Receipts, bank statements, credit card bills. "Maureen has been spending money well beyond what her income should allow," he explained. "The boutique where she works pays about $12 an hour. She works part-time. That is maybe $1,500 a month after taxes." He pointed to one of the receipts. "This bracelet she bought 2 weeks ago? $3,000. Paid in cash." Another receipt. "This purse? $2,200. Also cash." He spread the papers out in front of me. "In the last 6 months, she has spent close to $30,000 on luxury items, none of it traceable to credit cards in her name, all cash purchases." I stared at the numbers. "Where is she getting the money?" Patel's expression darkened. "That is where it gets worse." He pulled out another document, an email, printed, highlighted in places. I was able to access some communication between Maureen and Mr. Brennan through a contact I have. This email was sent 3 weeks ago. He handed it to me. I read it slowly. The words blurred at first. I had to blink several times to focus. It was from Maureen to David. The subject line read, "Timeline update." I kept reading. "David, Eddie is finally coming around. I have been working on him for months about the house. He is starting to see it my way. His mother does not need that much space. Once I convince him to talk her into selling, we can move forward. The property is worth at least $600,000, maybe more depending on the market. Eddie will inherit it eventually, but we do not have time to wait for that. I need him to push her to sell now while she is still healthy and can be persuaded. Once the sale goes through, Eddie and I will have enough for a decent down payment on our own place. That should keep him happy and distracted for a while. After the divorce is finalized, you and I can move forward without any complications. He still does not suspect anything. Just keep being patient. This will all be worth it. M." I read it 3 times. Each time, the words hit harder. After the divorce is finalized, he still does not suspect anything. Once the sale goes through, my hands started shaking so badly I had to set the paper down. "She is planning to leave him," I whispered. Patel nodded. "Yes, but not until after she gets what she wants. The plan seems to be this. Convince Eddie to pressure you into selling your home. Use the proceeds to buy a house together. Then, once everything is settled and the money is secure, she files for divorce. In a marriage that short, with joint property involved, she could walk away with a significant amount." I felt sick. "And Eddie has no idea." "None," Patel said. "From what I can tell, he believes she loves him. He believes they are building a life together. He has no idea she is using him as a stepping stone." I pressed my hand to my mouth. All this time, I thought Maureen was just manipulative, just greedy, just a bad influence. But this was so much worse. She was not just after my house. She was not just pressuring Eddie. She was destroying him, using his trust, using his love, using his loyalty to his mother as a weapon to get what she wanted. And when she was done, she was going to leave him with nothing. Patel reached across the desk and placed a steady hand on the table near mine. "I know this is hard to hear," he said gently, "but you needed to know. Because if you do not stop this, your son is going to lose everything. His marriage, his money, and possibly his relationship with you if he blames you for not selling when she asked." I looked up at him, tears blurring my vision. "What kind of person does this?" I whispered. Patel's face was kind but firm. The kind who sees people as tools, not as human beings. He gathered the photos and documents back into the folder and closed it. "You have options now, Mrs. Dawson. You can show this to Eddie. You can confront Maureen. You can protect your assets legally so she never gets what she is after, or you can do all 3. I wiped my eyes and took a deep breath. "I need to protect my home first," I said, "before anything else. If she is planning to manipulate Eddie into making me sell, I need to make sure that is not even possible." Patel nodded. "Smart. I know a good family attorney, someone who specializes in estate planning and asset protection. I can give you her number." "Please." He wrote down a name and number on a small card and handed it to me. "Attorney Sarah Harris." "Wait. Sarah is a prohibited name. Let me change that. Attorney Rebecca Harris. She will be able to help you set up a trust or other legal protections," Patel said. "Make sure your property stays yours, no matter what anyone tries." I took the card and slipped it into my purse along with the folder. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for finding the truth, even though it hurts." Patel stood and walked me to the door. "Mrs. Dawson," he said as I stepped into the hallway, "you are stronger than you think, and you are doing the right thing, not just for yourself, for your son too." I nodded, though I was not sure I believed him. I walked down those creaky stairs and out into the sunlight. The world looked the same as it had an hour ago. The same streets, the same sky, the same warmth in the air. But everything had changed. I got into my car and sat there for a long time, staring at the folder on the passenger seat. Inside were photographs of betrayal, proof of lies, evidence of a plan designed to destroy my son's life and steal everything my husband and I had worked for. I thought about Eddie, the way he used to look at Maureen when they first started dating, like she was the most wonderful thing that had ever happened to him. I thought about the way he defended her, the way he pulled away from me to make her happy, and now I knew why. Because she had been whispering in his ear for months, planting seeds of doubt, making him believe that his mother was the problem, that I was holding them back, that my house was an opportunity, not a home. And he believed her, because he loved her, and she was using that love like a tool. I picked up the folder and held it against my chest. She was never coming for just my son. She was coming for everything, but she made one mistake. She underestimated me. She thought I was just a lonely old widow who would do anything to keep her son happy. She thought I would be easy to manipulate, easy to pressure, easy to break. She was wrong. I started the car and pulled out of the parking lot. I had work to do. And this time, I was not going to wait for someone else to protect me. I was going to protect myself. And I was going to protect my son, whether he knew he needed it or not. The next morning, I called attorney Rebecca Harris. Her office was downtown, in one of those newer buildings with glass windows and polished floors. The kind of place that felt professional, serious. I needed serious. The receptionist led me to a small conference room where Rebecca was waiting. She was younger than I expected, maybe in her late 30s, with sharp eyes and a calm presence that put me at ease immediately. "Mrs. Dawson," she said, standing to shake my hand. "Mr. Patel told me you might be calling. Please have a seat." I sat down and placed the folder Patel had given me on the table between us. "I need to protect my home," I said simply. "And I need to make sure no one can pressure me into selling it. Not my son, not his wife, no one." Rebecca nodded and opened a notepad. "Tell me what's going on." I told her everything, the whole story, Maureen's manipulation, the affair, the plan to use Eddie to convince me to sell, the emails outlining her timeline. Rebecca listened without interrupting. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and folded her hands. "Mrs. Dawson, you have more control than you realize," she said, "and we can make sure it stays that way." She explained it to me in terms I could understand. A living trust. It would allow me to keep complete control of my property while I was alive. No one could force me to sell. No one could take it from me. And when I eventually passed, the house would transfer according to my wishes, not someone else's demands. "We can also add conditions," Rebecca said. "For example, if you want to ensure that your son inherits the property, we can include a clause that protects it from being claimed by a spouse in a divorce. We can also specify that if anyone has attempted to manipulate or pressure you into selling, they are excluded from inheritance entirely." I stared at her. "You can do that?" "Absolutely. It's your property, Mrs. Dawson. You get to decide what happens to it. Not your son, not his wife, you." For the first time in months, I felt something I had almost forgotten. Power. Not over other people, but over my own life, my own choices. "I want that," I said firmly. "All of it." Rebecca smiled. "Good. I'll draft the documents. You'll need to sign them in front of a notary, and I'll make sure everything is filed properly. Once it's done, your home is protected. Permanently." She paused. "But I have to ask, what are you planning to do about your son? Are you going to tell him what you found?" I thought about that for a long moment. "Yes," I said quietly, "but not yet. Not until I'm ready. Not until he can see the truth with his own eyes." Rebecca nodded slowly. "Just be careful. Confrontations like this can go badly if they're not handled right. People don't always react the way you hope they will." "I know," I said, "but he deserves to know, even if it destroys him, because if I don't tell him, she will destroy him anyway." Rebecca reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. "You're doing the right thing," she said gently, "for yourself and for him." 3 days later, I returned to her office to sign the papers. The documents were thick, full of legal language I only half understood. But Rebecca walked me through every page, every clause, every protection. When I signed my name at the bottom, I felt something shift inside me. Strength. The house was mine. Fully, legally, irrevocably. Maureen could scheme all she wanted. She could whisper in Eddie's ear. She could plan and manipulate and lie, but she would never get my home. I walked out of that office with my head held higher than it had been in months. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with Patel's folder spread out in front of me. Photographs, receipts, emails, bank statements, evidence of betrayal, proof of lies. I studied every detail. I memorized the timeline. I read the emails until I could recite them from memory. And then I started planning. I thought about Eddie, about the son I raised, the boy who used to hold my hand when we crossed the street. The teenager who brought me flowers on Mother's Day even when he had no money. The young man who cried at his father's funeral and told me he would always take care of me. That boy was still in there somewhere, buried under Maureen's manipulation, confused by her lies, blinded by love. But he was still there, and I was going to bring him back. Not with anger, not with accusations, with truth. I needed him to see what I had seen, to feel the betrayal I had felt, to understand that the woman he loved was using him as a tool to steal from his own mother. But I also needed to be smart. If I just showed him the folder and said, "Look what your wife is doing," he would defend her. He would make excuses. He would accuse me of being jealous or controlling or unable to let go. That is what people do when the truth is too painful. They reject it. They protect the lie because the lie feels safer. So I needed a moment. A moment where he could not deny what was right in front of him. A moment where the truth was undeniable. I thought about holidays, about family traditions, about the times when people let their guard down and show who they really are. And then it came to me. Christmas Eve. I pulled out my calendar and counted the weeks. 2 months. I had 2 months to prepare. 2 months to make sure everything was in place. 2 months to plan the one night that would change everything. I reached for a pen and a piece of paper. I started writing. A guest list. Just Eddie and Maureen. A menu. Eddie's favorite foods. The meal I used to make when he was a boy. Gifts. I thought carefully about this. What would mean something to Eddie? What would show him I still loved him, even after everything? A car. He had been talking about wanting a nicer vehicle for months. I had been saving, not because I owed him anything, but because love does not stop just because it has been hurt. And for Maureen, a designer handbag, not because she deserved it, but because I needed her to feel safe, comfortable, unsuspecting. I wanted her to think she had won. I wanted her to believe that I was just a foolish old woman showering them with gifts because I was desperate for their approval. And then, when she was at her most confident, when she thought the night was going exactly as she planned, I would present the truth. Not with shouting, not with tears, just facts. Photographs, emails, receipts. Let the evidence speak for itself. I folded the paper and set it aside. Then I pulled out a large manila envelope from the drawer. The kind with a metal clasp. Slowly, carefully, I placed every piece of evidence inside. The photos of Maureen with David, the receipts showing cash purchases, the printed emails outlining her plan, the bank statements, all of it. I sealed the envelope and wrote Eddie's name on the front in neat handwriting. Then I placed it in the drawer of the table beside my favorite chair in the living room, the same chair where I would sit on Christmas Eve. The same chair where I would hand my son the truth. I stared at the envelope for a long time. Part of me wanted to call Eddie right now, to warn him, to beg him to see what was happening before it was too late. But I knew that would not work. He had to see it himself. He had to feel the weight of betrayal in his own hands. I closed the drawer and stood up. 2 months. I could wait 2 months. I had waited this long already. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. The sun was setting. The sky was turning pink and orange, the way it always did in Florida. For the first time in a long time, I did not feel afraid. I did not feel weak. I felt ready. Maureen thought she was playing a game. She thought she had all the pieces in place. She thought she was 10 steps ahead. But she forgot something. Mothers do not give up on their children. Not when they are in danger. Not when they are being used. Not when they are being destroyed by someone who does not truly love them. I turned away from the window and whispered to the empty room. Christmas Eve. The weeks passed slowly. November came and went. The weather cooled slightly, though in Florida that just meant you could walk outside without feeling like you were stepping into an oven. I spent those weeks preparing. Not just for Christmas Eve. For everything that would come after. I contacted a dealership about a used BMW. Something reliable. Something Eddie would love. The salesman showed me a few options, and I chose one that was 3 years old but looked brand new. Clean interior. Low mileage. The kind of car a young man starting his career would be proud to drive. I paid for it in full. No financing. No loans. It sat in the dealership lot with my name on the paperwork, waiting for Christmas Eve. I also went to the designer store downtown, the one where women with more money than sense spent hours browsing handbags that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. The saleswoman approached me with a polite smile. "Can I help you find something?" "I need a handbag," I said. "Something expensive. Something that would impress a young woman who likes luxury." She showed me several options. I chose one that looked elegant but understated, the kind Maureen would want to show off in photos. I paid for it the same way I paid for the car, in full, no hesitation. The saleswoman wrapped it carefully in tissue paper and placed it in a branded bag. "Lucky recipient," she said with a smile. I nodded but did not smile back. Lucky was not the word I would use. By early December, I was ready to send the invitation. I sat at my kitchen table with my phone in my hand, staring at Eddie's name and my contacts. I could have just called. But a text felt safer, less likely to lead to questions I was not ready to answer yet. I typed carefully. "Hi, sweetheart. I would love to have you and Maureen over for Christmas Eve dinner. It has been too long since we spent the holidays together. Let me know if you can make it. Love, Mom." I hit send before I could overthink it. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. It was not Eddie who replied. It was Maureen. "Hi, Ruth. That sounds great. We will be there. Also, I have been meaning to talk to you about the house situation. Christmas Eve would be a perfect time to discuss it. See you then." I stared at the message. She could not help herself. Even in a response to a simple dinner invitation, she had to bring up the house. She had to remind me that she had an agenda, that this was not just a family gathering for her. It was an opportunity. I set the phone down and took a deep breath. She thought she was walking into a negotiation, a chance to finally convince me to sell, a moment where she could push Eddie to pressure me in person, face to face, until I gave in. She had no idea what she was really walking into. Eddie texted an hour later. "Thanks, Mom. Looking forward to it." Short, polite, distant. But he was coming. That was all that mattered. The days leading up to Christmas Eve were strange. I cleaned the house even though it was already clean. I decorated the tree with the same ornaments Ray and I had used for decades. I hung lights around the windows. I set out the nativity scene Ray's mother had given us when we first got married. Everything looked festive, warm, inviting, but underneath the surface, I was preparing for war. Not the loud kind, not the kind with shouting and broken dishes. The quiet kind, the kind fought with truth and documents and evidence that could not be argued away. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would stay calm, how I would present the envelope without emotion, without anger, without giving Maureen any opportunity to twist the narrative. I would let the facts speak for themselves. 3 days before Christmas, I picked up the BMW from the dealership. They detailed it for me, tied a big red bow on the hood. I drove it home carefully and parked it in my garage, hidden from view. Eddie would not see it until Christmas Eve. I also wrapped Maureen's handbag. Expensive paper, a silk ribbon. I made it look like I had put thought into it, like I cared. Because I needed her to believe I was still trying to win her approval. The night before Christmas Eve, I could not sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that could go wrong. What if Eddie did not believe me? What if he thought I had fabricated the evidence? What if he chose Maureen over the truth? What if he walked out and never spoke to me again? The thoughts circled in my mind like vultures. But then I thought about the alternative. If I did nothing, Maureen would continue manipulating him. She would pressure him into convincing me to sell my home. She would take the money, file for divorce, and leave him devastated and broke. And he would never know that I could have stopped it, that I had the truth in my hands and chose to stay silent. I could not live with that. Whatever happened tomorrow, at least Eddie would know. At least he would have the chance to see who Maureen really was. What he did with that information was up to him, but I would not let him walk blindly into destruction. I got out of bed and walked to the living room. I opened the drawer where I had placed the envelope weeks ago. It was still there, sealed, heavy, with the weight of truth. I picked it up and held it for a moment. Then I carried it to my bedroom and set it on the nightstand beside my bed. Tomorrow, I would place it in the drawer next to my chair in the living room, where it would wait, hidden, ready. I climbed back into bed and closed my eyes, and for the first time in months, I fell asleep without anxiety twisting in my chest. Because I was no longer waiting for something terrible to happen. I was ready for it. Christmas Eve morning arrived with clear skies and warm air. I woke up early, made coffee, sat on the back porch and watched the sun rise over the neighbor's fence. The world felt quiet, peaceful. I thought about Ray, about what he would say if he were here. He would probably tell me I was doing the right thing, that protecting Eddie meant telling him the truth, even when it hurt. Ray never liked liars. He had no patience for manipulation or deceit. He would have hated Maureen. I finished my coffee and went inside. There was work to do. I spent the morning cooking. Roast turkey, garlic mashed potatoes, cornbread, green beans with bacon, cranberry sauce. All of Eddie's favorites. The house filled with the smell of home. The kind of smells that make you feel safe, loved. I set the table with the good china, the silverware Ray and I received as a wedding gift, the cloth napkins I only used on special occasions. Everything looked perfect. I placed the wrapped handbag under the tree. I put the small box with the car keys beside it. Then I walked to my bedroom and picked up the envelope. I carried it to the living room and placed it in the drawer beside my chair. Out of sight, waiting. I stood there for a moment, staring at the closed drawer. Tonight, everything would change. Either Eddie would see the truth and choose to protect himself, or he would reject it and choose Maureen. Either way, I would know. And I would finally stop living in this painful limbo of watching my son be destroyed and being powerless to stop it. I took a deep breath. Then I went to the kitchen to finish preparing dinner. It was almost time. They arrived at 6 o'clock sharp. I heard the car pull into the driveway and took a deep breath before opening the door. Eddie stood on the porch holding a bottle of wine. He smiled when he saw me, but it did not quite reach his eyes. The kind of smile you give when you are not sure what to expect. "Hey, Mom. Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, sweetheart." I hugged him tight. He hugged back, but only for a moment before stepping away. Maureen walked up behind him, scrolling on her phone. She glanced up briefly. "Hi, Ruth. Something smells good." "Thank you. Come in. Dinner is almost ready." They stepped inside. Eddie looked around at the decorations, the tree, the table set with china. "Wow, Mom, you really went all out." "I wanted it to be special," I said softly. Maureen wandered into the living room, her eyes scanning everything. The furniture, the walls, the windows. She was doing it again. Assessing, calculating. I watched her for a moment, then turned back to Eddie. "Would you like something to drink before dinner?" "Sure, I'll take some water." We walked to the kitchen together, just the two of us. For a brief second, it felt normal. "How have you been, Mom?" he asked. "Good," I said, pouring him a glass. "Busy getting ready for tonight." He nodded, but his mind seemed somewhere else. "And you?" I asked. "How's work?" "Fine. Busy. You know how it is." He took the glass and drank without looking at me. I wanted to reach out, to touch his arm, to tell him everything right then and there. But I held back. Not yet. Maureen appeared in the doorway. "Eddie, come look at this." He glanced at me, then walked out of the kitchen. I stood there alone, gripping the edge of the counter. Dinner was tense. We sat at the table with plates full of food, but the conversation felt forced, hollow. Eddie talked about work. I asked polite questions. Maureen said almost nothing. She picked at her turkey, scrolled through her phone between bites, and checked her watch twice, like she had somewhere better to be. I tried to ignore it. I focused on Eddie. On the way, he ate the mashed potatoes the same way he had as a child, mixing in too much butter. For a moment, I allowed myself to remember the boy he used to be. The boy who laughed at my terrible jokes. The boy who helped me carry groceries without being asked. The boy who told me I was the best cook in the world even when I burned the roast. That boy was still in there. I had to believe that. After dinner, we moved to the living room. The tree lights blinked softly. The room felt warm, almost peaceful, but my heart was pounding. "Should we do gifts?" I asked, keeping my voice light. Eddie nodded. "Sure." I reached under the tree and pulled out the small box first, the one with the car keys inside. I handed it to Eddie. "This is for you, sweetheart." He looked surprised. "Mom, you didn't have to get me anything." I wanted to. He opened the box slowly. When he saw the keys, his face went blank. Then his eyes widened. "Mom, are these?" "Go look in the garage," I said quietly. He stood up, holding the keys like they might disappear if he moved too fast. He walked to the side door that led to the garage and opened it. I heard his breath catch. "Mom, a BMW." He turned to look at me, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. "You didn't have to do this." "I know," I said, "but I wanted to. You work hard. You deserve something nice." He walked back into the living room and hugged me. A real hug this time, the kind that reminded me why I was doing all of this. "Thank you," he whispered. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." He pulled back, his eyes glistening slightly. Maureen was still sitting on the couch, watching with an unreadable expression. I picked up the second gift. The designer handbag. "And this is for you, Maureen." She took it without standing, opened it carefully, lifted the bag out of the tissue paper. For a second, her eyes lit up. She turned it over in her hands, examining the brand label. Then she pulled out her phone and took a quick photo of herself holding it. "Cute," she said flatly. She set the bag down on the couch beside her like it was a throw pillow. No thank you, no appreciation, just a dismissive acknowledgement. Eddie frowned slightly, but said nothing. I folded my hands in my lap and waited. This was it. The moment I had been dreading and preparing for at the same time. Eddie cleared his throat. "Mom, about your gift." I looked at him. He shifted uncomfortably. He would not meet my eyes. "We didn't get you anything this year." The words hung in the air. I blinked. My chest tightened. "Oh," I said softly. Eddie tried to laugh it off. "Yeah," Maureen said. "Well, she said you need to learn to give without expecting anything back. You know, like, generosity shouldn't come with strings attached." He was trying to make it sound reasonable, philosophical even. But the words landed like stones. I looked at Maureen. She was leaning back against the couch, arms crossed, a small, satisfied smile on her face. Not embarrassed, not apologetic, proud. Eddie kept talking, his voice growing quieter. "It's not personal, Mom. It's just, Maureen thinks it's important that we all learn to be less materialistic, especially around the holidays." He gestured vaguely at the gifts I had given them. "You've been so generous. And we appreciate it, we really do. But we thought, maybe this year, you could just enjoy giving without needing something in return." His voice trailed off. Maureen's smile widened just slightly. She thought she had won. She thought this moment, this humiliation, would break me, would make me desperate for their approval, would make me willing to do anything to get back into their good graces, including selling my house. I sat very still. The room felt smaller. The lights too bright. The warmth I had worked so hard to create felt hollow. But I did not cry. I did not beg. I did not react the way she expected. Instead, I felt that same clarity I had felt months ago, the same strength I had felt when I signed the legal documents protecting my home. I reached into the drawer beside my chair. My hand did not shake. I pulled out the envelope. Thick, heavy, sealed with the truth inside. I placed it on the coffee table between us. Eddie looked confused. Maureen's smile faded just slightly. "Well," I said quietly, my voice steady, "if tonight is about lessons, then let me teach you something." I looked directly at Maureen. "Go on," I said. "Open it." Eddie glanced at Maureen, then at the envelope. Maureen leaned forward slowly. Her fingers hesitated for just a moment before she picked it up. She unsealed the metal clasp and pulled out the first photograph. The color drained from her face. Eddie leaned closer, frowning. "What is that?" Maureen tried to shove the photo back into the envelope, but Eddie grabbed her wrist. "Let me see." He pulled the envelope toward him and dumped the contents onto the table. Photographs scattered across the surface. Receipts, printed emails, bank statements. Eddie picked up one of the photos. His hands started to shake. It was Maureen. With another man, his hand on her waist, her smiling up at him. Eddie's face went pale. What is this?" His voice cracked. He picked up another photo. Then another. Then he saw the email. The one where Maureen outlined her plan. The timeline, the divorce, the house. He read it slowly, his lips moving slightly as he processed each word. When he finished, he looked up at Maureen. "Tell me this isn't real." Maureen opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Eddie, it's not what it looks like. Your mother is trying to turn you against me. She's jealous. She's always been jealous." Eddie's hands were trembling now. "Then explain the photos. Explain the emails. Explain this." He held up a receipt for the bracelet she had been wearing for weeks. $3,000, Maureen. Where did you get $3,000? She stammered, tried to form an excuse, but nothing came out that made sense. Eddie stood up, the papers still clutched in his hands. His face was a mixture of shock, anger, and heartbreak. "You were going to leave me," he whispered, "after you got the money from my mom's house. You were going to leave me." Maureen's face twisted. "Your mother was holding us back," she snapped. "We needed that house, Eddie. We deserved it. And she was being selfish." The mask slipped. The sweet, loving wife disappeared. What stood in front of us now was someone cold, calculating, desperate. Eddie took a step back. "Get out." Maureen blinked. "What?" "Get out." His voice was low, controlled, but shaking with rage. "Eddie, please, just listen." "No," he shouted. "Get out of my mother's house. Now." Maureen stood frozen for a moment. Then, with a burst of fury, she grabbed her purse and the designer handbag I had given her. "Fine. You'll regret this, Eddie. You'll regret choosing her over me." She stormed toward the door, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. She slammed it so hard the ornaments on the tree rattled. And then she was gone. The silence after Maureen left was deafening. Eddie stood in the middle of the living room, still holding the photographs in his trembling hands. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. Then his knees buckled. He collapsed onto the couch, covering his face with his hands. And he broke. Deep, shaking sobs that came from somewhere I had not heard in years. Not since Ray's funeral. Not since the day we buried the man who had raised him to be better than this. I moved slowly toward him and sat down beside him. I did not say anything at first. I just placed my hand gently on his shoulder. He flinched, then leaned into me, burying his face against my shoulder the way he used to when he was small and the world felt too big. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he choked out between sobs. "I'm so sorry." "Shh," I whispered. "It's okay." "It's not okay," he said, pulling back to look at me. His eyes were red, filled with tears and shame. I let her say those things to you. I stood there and watched her treat you like you were nothing. I believed her when she said you were being selfish. I actually believed her." His voice cracked. "And tonight, what I said to you about not getting you a gift, about you needing to learn a lesson." He shook his head, unable to finish. "Eddie," I said gently, taking his hand in mine, "you trusted someone you loved. That's not a flaw. That's being human. But I should have seen it, he said desperately. I should have known. The expensive things. The way she talked about your house. The way she kept pulling me away from you. He wiped his eyes roughly. How could I have been so blind? I squeezed his hand. Because love makes us blind sometimes. It makes us want to believe the best in people, even when the signs are there. And she was very good at what she did. She manipulated you slowly, carefully. You didn't stand a chance. Eddie looked down at the photographs scattered across the table. How long have you known? Since September, I said quietly. I overheard her on the phone at your cookout, talking about a plan, about the house. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know how deep it went, so I hired someone to find out. He looked at me, stunned. You hired an investigator? I nodded. I had to know the truth. Not for me, for you. Because I could see what she was doing to you. I could see you pulling away, changing, and I knew that if I didn't stop it, she was going to destroy you. Eddie's face crumpled again. I almost let her, he whispered. I almost convinced you to sell this house. She kept saying we needed it, that it was the only way we could move forward. And I was starting to believe her. He looked around the living room, at the tree, at the photos of Ray on the wall, at the home his parents had built. I almost took this away from you. But you didn't, I said firmly. And that's what matters. He shook his head. Only because you stopped me. If you hadn't found out, if you hadn't showed me tonight. His voice broke. I would have lost everything. The house, you, my self-respect, everything. I pulled him close again. You haven't lost me, I said softly. You will never lose me. I'm your mother. That doesn't change, no matter what. We sat like that for a long time. The tree lights blinked softly. The house was quiet except for the sound of Eddie's breathing as he tried to calm down. Finally, he pulled back and wiped his eyes. What do I do now? He asked. About Maureen. About everything. I took a deep breath. You protect yourself. Legally, financially, emotionally. You talk to a lawyer. You make sure she can't take anything from you. And then you start rebuilding your life. Eddie nodded slowly, like he was trying to absorb it all. And you, he said, looking at me. The house. Did you do anything to protect it? I smiled faintly. I set up a living trust. The house is legally protected. No one can force me to sell it. And when I'm gone, it will go to you, with conditions that protect it from anyone who tried to manipulate me. Eddie let out a shaky breath. You thought of everything. I had to, I said simply, because I knew you couldn't see what was happening, and I wasn't going to let her take everything your father and I worked for. He reached over and hugged me again. Tight, desperate. I love you, Mom. I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner. I love you too, sweetheart, and you're going to be okay. It's going to hurt for a while, but you're going to be okay. He nodded against my shoulder. We sat there together as the night grew late. The food sat untouched on the table. The gifts remained under the tree. But for the first time in months, I had my son back. Not the version Maureen had shaped him into, not the distant, cold stranger who avoided my calls. The real Eddie, the boy I raised, the man his father would have been proud of. Eventually, Eddie stood up. I should go, he said quietly. I need to figure out where I'm staying tonight. I can't go back to the apartment. You'll stay here, I said firmly. In your old room, for as long as you need. His eyes filled with tears again. Thank you. I walked him upstairs and showed him to the guest room, the same room he had slept in as a teenager. I had kept it the same all these years, just in case. Get some rest, I said. We'll figure everything out tomorrow. He nodded and closed the door. I walked back downstairs and stood in the living room, looking at the mess on the coffee table. The photographs, the emails, the evidence of betrayal. I gathered it all up slowly and placed it back in the envelope. Then I walked to the fireplace and stared at the flames I had lit earlier in the evening. Part of me wanted to burn it all, to destroy the evidence and pretend none of it had ever happened. But I didn't, because Eddie might need it. For the divorce, for the lawyers, for proof of what she had done. I set the envelope aside and sat down in my chair. The house was quiet now, peaceful. Christmas Eve hadn't given me joy. It hadn't given me the warm family gathering I had hoped for when I sent that invitation weeks ago. But it had given me something more important: clarity, freedom, and my son back. I thought about Maureen, about where she was right now, probably calling David, probably already planning her next move. But she had lost. She hadn't gotten the house. She hadn't gotten the money. And she had lost Eddie. All because she underestimated a mother's love. All because she thought I was weak. I smiled faintly and looked at the tree. The ornaments Ray and I had collected over the years blinked softly in the light. "We did it, Ray," I whispered. "We protected him." I sat there for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened, everything I had learned. That silence is not weakness. That patience is not surrender. That sometimes the people we love need to be protected from their own choices. And that boundaries, even painful ones, are acts of love. I stood up slowly and turned off the tree lights. Then I walked upstairs to bed. Tomorrow, Eddie would wake up in his childhood room. He would have to face the reality of everything he had lost. He would have to grieve, rebuild, start over. But he would not do it alone, and he would do it as himself, not as someone else's tool. As I lay in bed, I thought about all of you watching this, all of you who have felt invisible in your own families, all of you who have given everything and received nothing but cruelty in return. I want you to know something. You are not weak for loving people who hurt you. You are not foolish for giving them chances. But you are also not required to destroy yourself to make them comfortable. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to protect what is yours. You are allowed to walk away from people who use your love as a weapon, even if those people are your own children, even if it breaks your heart. Because sometimes the greatest act of love is saying no. If this story resonated with you, if you have ever had to make the painful choice to protect yourself from someone you love, leave a comment below, share your story, let others know they are not alone. And if you believe that people should be held accountable for how they treat those who love them, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you don't miss the stories that matter. Because we all deserve to be treated with dignity, even by our own family, especially by our own family. Merry Christmas. And may you all find the courage to protect your peace.